Hi. Good evening. It's so nice to see everybody here tonight. What a full house. This is incredible. And deservedly, because this is a really special occasion. My name is Emily Foster Day. I'm the Vice President of Institutional Advancement at MassArt. And what Steve just did is appropriate to my next remarks, which is we're here to celebrate Steve. And what a moment to celebrate. Tonight we have an incredible conversation between Steve Locke and Evan Garza. And we are going to finally unveil the career monograph that Steve and Evan worked on together and will be available for purchasing and signing after the talk. So I must confess something to you. I am not a neutral party. I've known Steve for more than 20 years, since I was very, very young. And he has been an important champion, sounding board, and just cheerleader for me during the last 20 years, during my career, with personal things. So when we had an opportunity to celebrate Steve here tonight in this sort of momentous career occasion, we said yes. Evan called me and said, "Hey, what do you guys think about hosting the unveiling and the launch of Steve's book?" And I said, "We will figure out how to make this work because it is so important that we do this here at MassArt." Steve, we're so proud of you. And we're so glad that you and Evan are here with us tonight. I had the pleasure of hearing them speak last year at MASS MoCA and viewing the incredible and powerful exhibition that Evan had curated of Steve's work there. And hands down, and I say this not lightly, it was one of the best artist talks I've ever heard in my life. So I think you're in for a treat. But before we get to that, I'm going to introduce our incredible Vice President of Academic Affairs and Provost, Dr. Brenda Malife. Dr. Malife joined us at MassArt in July 2022 and has seamlessly become a part of this community. Holding a PhD in art history and a master's in library science from the University of Iowa, Provost Malife's career in higher education encompasses 24 years as an art historian and 15 years as an art administrator. Over those years, she has been vice president, acting dean, chief of staff, interim president, associate professor, and chairperson. As the chief academic officer here at MassArt, Provost Malife leads and ensures the excellence of the college's academic programs, is responsible for the academic mission, the curriculum, and the entire learning experience for each student. And I will say she's doing a fantastic job. So I'll turn it over to you.
Welcome, everyone. It's so nice to see all of you. Steve and Evan, we are so delighted that you are here this evening. Last year, you heard a little from Emily, a group of MassArt students, faculty, friends, and supporters had the opportunity to hear you in conversation at MASS MoCA about Steve's exhibition, The Fire Next Time. It was a profound, honest talk about a brilliant and powerful exhibition. It was also clear that Steve and Evan aren't just professional collaborators, but that they, if I would just slow down, that they are also really wonderful friends. Just over a year later, especially given what a year it has been, we are incredibly grateful to have both of you here at MassArt. The exhibition at MASS MoCA grew into Locke's first career monograph, Steve Locke, I Said What I Said, edited with text by Evan Garza, exploring 3 decades of Locke's career. It is our honor to launch this publication here at MassArt this evening. In quickly reviewing the book, it did not escape my notice that Evan initiated the exhibition and the monograph, so although Steve is the publication's focus, I want to lift up what Evan has done through their curatorial work and their writing to introduce artists like Steve, Vincent Valdez, and Jeffrey Gibson to new audiences, and to give those who are already familiar with their work new insights into their processes, thoughts, and their work in context with the world. Evan not only curates and writes about art and the artists, but creates new opportunities, such as the Fire Island Artist Residency that they co-founded, the first residency program in the world exclusively for LGBTQ+ artists. And near and dear to our hearts here at MassArt, they also teach. So Evan, thank you for being here. So Evan. And as you heard, Steve will always be a part of MassArt, and we have a reminder of him here every day. If you haven't gotten a chance to see his neon pink normal installation, take a moment to admire it outside the DMC, right next to the MassArt Art Museum along Huntington Avenue. Although we might not characterize anything we do here at MassArt as banal as normal, you may or may not know of MassArt's history as a normal school, which was the term for schools training teachers when MassArt was founded in 1873. The normal installation was the perfect celebration of MassArt's legacy and impact for our 150th anniversary. Less obvious, but more important, Steve's impact on MassArt is in the lives and the work of the students he taught here, who are making their mark on the world, and as a triple MassArt alum himself. We could not be more proud of his commitment to the principles that underpin our mission and values, such as art education, justice, observing, questioning, and self-expression. Steve has said about his exhibition, The Fire Next Time, quote, "I have never really been interested in trauma, to be completely honest with you. I have been interested in justice. The work of healing is not mine to do. My work is to make you look and to make you unable to look away," unquote. In a world increasingly dominated by quick hits, reels, and streaming, that magnetism that makes you pause to not only make you pause is not only rare, but needed, especially when it comes to subjects we might like to avoid: privilege, racism, brutality, homophobia, because they feel unpleasant or because deep down we suspect that the stories society has taught us aren't the full picture or the only ways of experiencing the world. In this book, Steve says, quote, "This is the hard thing about the current moment. Most people think that they can't understand anything outside of themselves," unquote. And that the remedy to that is, quote, "Art is the way we tell each other about ourselves," unquote. We are exceptionally grateful for Steve's approach and how he brings us in to grapple with histories of racism and anti-Blackness, the Western canon of art history, and American society. And we are exceptionally grateful for Evan's engagement with art and artists and introducing us to them. I will now turn it over to MassArt Professor Emerita Lois Hetland, a colleague of Steve's from the Art Ed Department. Lois recently published an in-depth conversation on creativity with Steve on her and Joe Fisaro's Substack. That's a lot of S's, which includes an assignment that Steve used to give his MassArt students. I highly recommend you read it. So Lois, I'll turn it over to you, and welcome back to MassArt. We're so happy you're here.
Hi. It's really nice to see you all. An awful lot of what I was planning to say has just been said, so I'll speak really fast. All right, I'm going to start with Evan. Evan Garza, the editor of I Said What I Said, tonight's featured book, has a tower of credentials. A global contemporary art scholar, queer art historian, and curator at MASS MoCA, Evan has over 2 decades of applied knowledge about ethics and best practices in collecting and non-collecting museums. They earned an MA from the Williams Graduate Program in the History of Art at the Clark Art Institute, focusing their scholarship on legacies of resistance, colonization, racial violence, queer art history, and artistic legacies of the AIDS epidemic. They grew up in Houston, were director of Rice Public Art at Rice University in Houston, assistant curator of modern contemporary art at the Blanton Museum of Art at the University of Texas at Austin, and artistic director and co-curator of the 2021 Texas Biennial. They co-founded and were assistant director of, from 2011 to 2015, the Fire Island residency, which you already know about. After brief stints in commercial galleries, Evan realized that their interests were not in sales, but in engaging audiences with ideas. They were exhibitions and program coordinator around the corner here at the School of the Museum of Fine Arts. They are now a graduate lecturer at RISD and have been a visiting graduate faculty at Lesley and Virginia Commonwealth Universities. Evan was also a 2021 U.S. Fulbright Scholar at the Irish Museum of Modern Art, serving as visiting research fellow in the Department of History of Art and Architecture at Trinity College, Dublin. Following curation of The Fire Next Time, they were appointed to a full-time role on MASS MoCA's curatorial team in July 2024. Recent publications are the U.S. Pavilion Catalog for the 60th Venice Biennale, Jeffrey Gibson, The Space in Which to Place Me, essays for At Home, Alice Neal in the Queer World, edited by Hilton Alls, and Vincent Valdez, Just a Dream. Other essays are published in Flash Art International, Art Papers, and Art Forum. And that's Evan. Okay, so now Steve Locke. In 2005, a photo of Steve's face was tacked on Maureen Kelly's office door. She was the art education department chair then, along with the headline, 10 Artists to Watch. And did I watch? In his classes, I eavesdropped on the structure of his critiques and his presentations on the historical roots and legacies of every kind of contemporary art. His knowledge is encyclopedic. Hailing from the Midwest, Cleveland and Detroit, he is artistically a son of MassArt, earning his BFA, MFA, and an honorary doctorate here, and teaching in the art education department, which evolved into an interdisciplinary studio department during his tenure. By the way, the normal installation is also Steve's tip of the hat to his colleagues in art education. And his exhibitions class produced that stunning mural by Imagine that's in the Tower lobby, which could really use an attribution sign, just saying. The focus of his work, portraiture, the male figure, modernism, and racial violence. Now he lives and works in upstate New York and teaches at CUNY's Hunter College in Manhattan. So here's a sampling of Steve's bona fides. He has a steady stream of group shows. His solo exhibitions, both in galleries and museums, began in 1996 with Guys with Ties and Other Portraits at the Noonan Gallery in Cambridge. Then came Some Men at the Patricia Doran Gallery in Boston, Rapture New Work at Samson Project in Boston, Companions at Mendes Wood in Sao Paulo, Brazil, You Don't Deserve Me, again at Samson, Family Pictures at Caiaphas Gallery in Boston, that's my very favorite. And then 2 museum shows, There's No One Left to Blame at the ICA in Boston and the Museum of Contemporary Art in Detroit. The last time we touched the water at the Hudson Opera House in Hudson, New York, and his site-specific work for the Gardner's facade, 3 Deliberate Grays for Freddie, a memorial to Freddie Gray. If you haven't seen it, you should watch the video on the Gardner's website. It shows the banner during installation as it unfurls down the facade while Steve talks about it. It's magnificent. His work has been reviewed in Art Forum, Art in America, the Boston Globe, and the New Yorker. He is represented by Alexander Gray Associates in New York and by La Montagne Gallery here in Boston, where his solo show, Waiting for My Man, opens today and runs through April 25th. A couple of honors, a Guggenheim, the Rappaport Prize from the Decortiva Sculpture Park and Museum, invitations to the Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture, where he's recently become a member of the Board of Governors, visiting professor and artist in residence at the Savannah College of Art and Design, artist in residence at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, the City of Boston, and the MacDowell Colony. He received an Art Matters Fellowship to Istanbul and grants from the Louis Comfort Symphony Foundation and Pollock Krasner Foundation. Now, he'll never tell you this, but I will. It hasn't been all roses. He's been at the receiving end of what I can only call public malice far too many times by audiences, colleagues, the police who detained him for being Black while walking on Center Street in JP. That short list of successes I mentioned, his confident persona and his sweet sunshiny face, really mask the ongoing costs to him. but he soldiers on, and so many have benefited. It's Hunter College's great good fortune that Steve left us for New York. Alexander Gray's lady luck that he joined their stable. And while we're at it, it's Boston's great loss, a travesty of ignorance, that we didn't build his auction block installation at Faneuil Hall. I'll close with 3 thoughts. First, the collaborative mind meld between artist and curator that Steve and Evan produced in that remarkable MASS MoCA show and this monograph. It must have been preordained, or maybe karma. It was some supernatural synchronicity or other. Second, Steve, we really miss you here, and we're so glad you stopped by. And third, Steve, honey, update your Wikipedia page and your website. They don't say you work at Hunter. Okay, the foreplay is finally over. Ladies and gentlemen, Evan Garza and Steve Locke.
I didn't tell her to say any of that. So my former colleagues are here. So good to see you guys. Oh, I have to use this. Hi.
Oh my goodness.
That was great.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was such a lovely set of introductions. Did my mother call and tell people what to say or something? It was really, that was lovely. And thank you so much for acknowledging the great mind and the great talent that is Evan Garza, who's with me tonight. So I'm very, very grateful to him. It's very rare that an artist has such a confident and generous interlocutor for their work. And so I'm deeply, deeply grateful to you.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to you too. And I am deeply, deeply grateful to MassArt for those introductions, for this moment. We're so honored and thrilled to launch this publication here at Steve's alma mater. And it is so evident every time I am in the room with people from MassArt, when you are in the room with them, there is this catalytic energy that fills the room that can only be qualified as love. So I want to thank MassArt. I want to thank you, but it's just so clearly evident that there's so much adoration for this incredible artist. So I'm sorry, you just clapped. Will you please clap again for Steve Locke?
It's funny.
I'm so excited to have this conversation.
There's so many amazing people in the audience. It's like, it's just incredible. Like Josephine Halverson is here. Like, you know, it's just, Jesus Christ. My God, yeah.
The last time that we did this, George was on your lap.
Yeah, my dog was here.
For the entire conversation. And I just want to like give a big shout out to George Locke.
She's in the book, so she's yeah. So what do you want to talk about?
Oh man, you know, I didn't come with an agenda.
Right. Because you really need to think about my work before you talk to me about it, because you know
had to Google you before I got here. No, the place that I thought we might start was, and this is like maybe a bit of a curveball, but it does relate to the work and what is at stake in Steve's work. But part of me wanted to start with the world. Like the state of the world, you know, as Emily so kindly mentioned, you know, Steve and I did a talk at MASS MoCA for MassArt alumni weekend, and it was remarkable. But so much has happened in the last year. None of those things are wonderful things to celebrate. The world is crueler. It's more hideous. It's more insidious. I could go on and on and on. And of course, this is like the cheery place to start, right? With the hideousness of the world. But the reason I want to start here is because your work addresses that very hideousness in a way that is remarkable and touching and beautiful. And so given the state of the world, what are your thoughts?
I think the hard thing about being alive right now is that like everybody wants like a hot take or a quick
Oh
solution
my
or
God.
like to say the precisely right thing about it. And no one has the courage to get it wrong or to admit they made a mistake or to like, well, that didn't work out so well. Let's try something different. Like no one, people commit to things and then they can't go back on what they said because that somehow is like,
Right.
because everyone needs to be perfect.
Right.
You know? And
Yeah, I have a message for all the students in the room. Cringe is productive.
it really is.
Like,
It really, really
fuck
is.
up, make mistakes.
It's, I don't know how you learn anything without failing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how you do it.
Right.
Like, and I think that drive to make the thing doesn't go away if
Right.
you don't get it right the first time.
Yeah.
I said to one of my students, like we were talking about, I got tickets to the New York City Ballet, no, American Ballet Theater, and Natalia Osipova is dancing Firebird, and I've never seen her dance live before, so I'm over the moon to go, right? And I said to one of my, I was showing them, no, she's not doing Firebird, she's doing Don Quixote, right? And I showed my students like the short clip of her dancing like the Kitri variation in Don Quixote, right? And they're like looking at her like she's like from another planet. And I said to them, do you know how many times she fell on her face to be able to do that? The number of times that you have to do like a chaîné turn across the stage or something like that. The amount of research, the amount of physical education, all this sort of stuff to be able to do that. And you think you're gonna sit down and draw a perfect still life the first time.
Right.
Like you really think you're gonna do that?
Yeah.
And like that, there's not a creature alive who can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and that notion that you would try something and not get it right, and that feeling of dissatisfaction
Mhm.
would be a motivator for you to try again.
Right.
Not for you to give up,
Right, sure.
but to try again.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, to get up, to do it again. Yeah, I'm really done. This is a hot take, but I'm really done with hot takes. You know, my husband got me into TikTok, and I hate him for it now because I just I swipe, half of it is a mall, and then the other half are hot takes. And I think if there's anything that we could use less of in the world, it's hot takes. That's my hot take.
Right.
But you know, I also want to acknowledge as well that the process of putting this book together was like a very indirect process, and so I want to like sort of back up and offer a little bit of context. So, a few years ago, I invited Steve, who I realized on the drive over from North Adams today, that I have known you for 18 years.
Has it really been that long?
Yeah, that's when I moved to Hyde Park. Yeah, we used to live in the same building in Hyde Park.
We met when we were 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just turned 21.
All right. 18 years.
I know we were we're still fresh faced. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know about that, but I just have a really good moisturizer. But I mean, I
Yeah,
don't really
that makes two of
really
us.
visit the-
Yeah, thank God for Korean skincare.
But yeah, so yeah, we and you were. I was living my studio. It was a studio building that we lived in,
Mhm.
and you and your partner Michael lived upstairs from me.
Yes.
And that was the studio where I made. There's no one left to blame. That's every show I had in Boston pretty much came out of that studio.
Right.
Yeah.
And we show up to the building, we're there to view, my husband and I are there to view an apartment. And we walk into the lobby, it's a common space, and there is a neon that is flickering between two alternating messages, and it is installed above the lobby. So the messages are in a pink neon and a blue neon, and they're flickering back and forth, casting this beautiful light on the lobby. And the messages going back and forth say, "God is love, you little faggot." And I was so moved. I can't even tell you. I was like, I have a very, very clear memory of just stopping dead in my tracks And again, I was a very, very young curator at the time. You couldn't barely be even refer to me as a curator. I was a kid full of ideas. And I was like, I want to know who this artist is.
Yeah.
And I had no idea that the maker of that work was actually more of a painter. And also that the centrality of portraiture was really key to understanding their work. And I knew nothing, and I didn't know anything about this artist. So we move in, and I come to know that it's Steve, who lives on the first floor of the building. And that was the very, very beginning of a really wonderful, beautiful friendship. For all of the other curators and academics and art historians that are in the room, and our artists as well, how these relationships begin, but we never know how they're going to end, or what the actual life of these relationships will be. And so you keep track of someone's work, you make note of their achievements, you go see their shows, and the interest grows, and the interest grows. And then inevitably, Helen Molesworth invited me to do a talk with Steve at the ICA, which I think was our last, apart from MASS MoCA, our last big institutional conversation.
That was the Artist's Voice. That was that series that they were doing, yeah.
But fast forward, I invite Steve to do a solo show with me at MASS MoCA, and I was really inspired by this ask that our former chief curator, Denise Marconish, asked of Nick Cave. She said, I want to do a show with you, but I want to do it without the sound suits. And he was like, fuck yeah, let's do it. And I tried to do it in person. I tried to nail down Steve, which was impossible to do. And so I finally FaceTimed him from the airport at SFO. And I was like, I'm sorry, I can't track you down. I have to FaceTime you. Let's do a show. And Steve was thrilled. And I said, but here's the deal. I want to do a show, but I want to do it without homage to the auction block, which is Steve's most popular or well-known body of work. And he said, hell yeah, let's do it.
It was weird because I was sort of dodging you because I knew you wanted to ask me about the show, but I was afraid that it was going to be an auction block show. That was my fear, that you were going to ask me to do that. And it's not that I don't love that work. I'm still connected to that work. I'm still making that work. I'm not showing that work, but I'm still making it. Mm-hmm. But I just didn't want to. It was such a fraught time, and we had a year before the show. Yeah. And I didn't want to show that work in that context because I didn't feel like it made sense to have those paintings in North Adams.
Sure.
So when you asked me to do the show and you said and the one thing is I don't want auction block, and I thought, oh my God, I can do something new, mm-hmm. and I can do something that wasn't, because it's a museum, right? So I don't have to sell anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to sell, right? So I don't have to worry about that. And MASS MoCA is an enormous institution, and there's so much happening there mm-hmm. that is spectacular, mm-hmm. right? I could do something that wasn't spectacular, mm-hmm. but was affecting in a similar way. You mm-hmm. know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wasn't going to do a Jeffrey Gibson show. I wasn't going to do a Building 5 show. That's not my jam.
Right.
But I was able to conceive of a sort of a tightly regulated organization of things mm-hmm. that hit as hard as I possibly could mm-hmm. within the context of that space.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and the invite. A lot of people in this room, everyone in this room, perhaps knows a great deal about Steve's work, and also just his own posture or feelings around the spectacle, right? The spectacular in our culture, in our social media culture, and the spectacle of violence in particular as it relates to Steve's work. And MASS MoCA is a spectacularly scaled place, and so I was very aware of this.
E.G. Hill built a roller coaster. It's just it's
big pink roller coaster.
It's everything can happen there,
yeah.
and I just to be in that context, and Louise Bourgeois is down the hall, and how do I step into that?
Right.
What I'm gonna and it's not about competing, right?
Sure.
This is a terrible story, and I know that this is being live streamed, so I'm going to try not to swear, and I'm going to try not to use anyone's name, but. I was doing this show at ICA, with a wonderful artist named Mary Reed Kelly, fantastic artists, Mary Reed and Patrick Kelly. And they were in the gallery next to me, right? And Mary's work, if you don't know it, is sound and video and performance and stuff like that. And I was in the next gallery and I was showing paintings, freestanding paintings and stuff like that. And Mary came in and she said, like, the sound of the video spills over into your room. Like, is that gonna bother you? And I said, Mary, I'm not trying to be an asshole or anything, but if someone comes in here and they're thinking about your work, I'm not doing my job. Right. So like, they're not gonna be thinking about you when they come in here.
Right.
They're gonna be thinking about me.
Right.
Right. So, and like, it was very sweet of her to say it, but
Yeah.
like, I've always felt that way. Like I was taught here that I had to make something that could be on the wall and hold its own space.
Right.
Right. That it wasn't about like putting my work next to someone and picking up some like sort of residual glory from it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like you had to put the thing on the wall and it has to do what it does.
Right.
And if it's next to something that stops your work from doing what it does, that means your work isn't that good.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And so understanding that, being in MASS MoCA, and this is where the genius of Evan Garza comes up, the placement of the show, the layout of the show, all that sort of stuff. I'm not very good at conceptualizing space in 3 dimensions. I don't think, that's not a skill set that I embrace in myself.
He
Let's put
is
it that way.
saying this, and he's literally sent me like a 3D file of the show. I don't even know how to use fucking SketchUp. And he's like, here you go.
I did lay
So
out the
don't believe
show,
a word that he says.
But the show, the important thing about the show was that it was the dialogue between the images and the freestanding work. And I was out of my depth in that.
Sure.
And as far as I'm concerned, you're probably one of the best. He did a show years ago at DeCordova called Paint Things, which was about the relationship between painted objects and sculpture, right? And it was so meticulously installed, it was so beautifully installed that I just knew after I'd done the layout, I said, look, I'm not gonna even address this stuff, like you're gonna do this part, right?
This is a perfect segue because, fast forward, we're living in the building in Hyde Park, in the same building. You know, we're in Boston, overlapping for a number of years. Steve had this brilliant show at Samson, and it was all freestanding paintings, and they had like pipes and wooden platforms, and I was in the process, and I think Steve knew this, I was in the process of curating that show for the DeCordova.
I didn't know that. I didn't know. No, I had no
You
idea.
could have fooled me because I walked into that show and I was like, I'll take that, I'll take that, I'll take that. I want that. And I was so thrilled because, thrilled about the work, of course, but also just thrilled that Steve had made that leap in the work. And there are so many artists in the room. You know yourself when you're in the studio and you hit a wall, or you're disappointed with the work that you make because you feel like maybe you're making a lot of the same work, or maybe you feel like you haven't challenged yourself, whatever it may be. This is like a very, it's a common experience for artists to feel like maybe they're hitting a wall in the work. And walking into that show at Samson was mind-boggling to me. I was so floored because, the painting, capital P, is a stand-in for all of art history. All of it. All of it can be condensed down to that one little emoji, right, with the little palette, with the little, right? It's a stand-in for all of art history. And in painting, you in particular have the capacity to acknowledge bodies, render bodies. Perhaps the body is like absent in the work or recalled. But those freestanding paintings, and there's a whole chapter in the book about them, they are in many ways like representations of bodies.
Yeah.
They bring the body into the space. And for me, particularly at this moment when I'm thinking about sculpture and I'm thinking about 3 dimensions, Steven Zavidas is in the room. I curated a show for him called Not About Paint. And it was all about paint. But it was all done in these very sort of sculptural, through sculptural means. And so to stumble upon this work for me felt like this huge aha moment. And your work at the time helped me understand the work that I was doing. So fast forward to the MASS MoCA show.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about spectacle. Part of the reason I wanted to make this ask of Steve to do the show with me was because we have there's a sort of precedent at MASS MoCA where artists are invited to do things that they've never been able to do before. And that's for a few reasons. One, we have 300,000 square feet of gallery space, so it's just cavernous.
Right.
So scale is something that is a direction that artists typically move in. We didn't have the capacity to really think about scale for our sort of intimately scaled project. But I knew, given this more sculptural turn in Steve's practice, that there might be some interest in doing something that you had not done
Right.
before. And so there were 2 commissions for the MASS MoCA project. One was called the Rainbow Sign, and then the other was signs 1 through 6, which were installed in the gallery. You want to talk about the Rainbow Sign?
It's funny because that piece, I went to MASS MoCA to do the site visit, to look at the space and all this sort of stuff, and to be assured that I would not have to deal with Building 5, which is in a lot of cases, it's where art goes to die. It really is. It's long before Evan's time, but I remember quite a few very, very bad Building 5 shows because the ambition of the work can't compete with the ambition of the space.
Mm-hmm.
It's like such a magnificent space. Mm-hmm. And so you can't, that's what was so great about E.J. Hill building a pink roller coaster in that space. Like, what else can you do in there, right?
Yeah.
So, I was really grateful I didn't have to do that. And then I went through the fab, what do we call it, the fab lab? Is that what you call it? Yeah, where the fabrication lab, which is people who have been sent from heaven to assist artists in making things. It was fantastic. And you would say things like, can you make this a little bit? Oh yeah, we can do that. We can do that. It was just great. It was really, really great. And I make my own work. Like I don't use assistants and stuff like that. I think if I ever had an assistant, like I don't know what they would do. I'd be like, can you keep me company? Like, you read me my horoscope or something. Like I don't know.
Gesso canvases.
I don't know what. I wouldn't even let them do that. Like I wouldn't let them. But I was in the Fab Lab and I saw the sculpture gantry, this massive thing for moving heavy objects, and I said, "Can I have that for the show?" Because the minute I saw it, I saw the piece, right? Because I knew that I wanted I wanted the Fire Next Time to be episodic. I wanted you to have one experience outside and then another experience going in, and then a prologue, and then the show, and then the sort of aftermath. I wanted it to feel like you were reading a book, right? I wanted it to feel like you were moving through different parts of a story. And I knew I had to have an introduction that said everything, right? I say this to students all the time who work in installation. The problem with most installation artists is that they don't know how to make a sculpture, right? Just make a sculpture. Like, can you make one thing that does what you want it to do, instead of arranging a bunch of shit in a room that as if like Egyptian funerary practices didn't exist, like as if installation is something new, right? And I said to a student, like, there's a reason why when you go into a Gothic cathedral, you feel compelled to kneel. That's not like the dogma, that's the building itself, right? And so thinking about installation practices that way, I'm not an installation artist, but I can create a series of interventions in visual space that guide you. There's a particular way to go through the show. And I knew I had to have something that would bring you into the space of the exhibition with a sense of wonder. First of all, like, how the hell did that happen? And also a sense of dread, right? Yeah. And so the minute I saw the gantry, I knew what the piece was gonna be. And so it all hinged on that. And then the other signs were secondary to that, right? But the ability to use the site itself, the things that were on site at MASS MoCA, the painting that was in the gallery, the sort of safety orange that was used, all the sorts of things. Helen Molesworth said something to me once, like, we usually think about the gallery as this thing that's empty that we put stuff into, right? But like, what if the gallery is already full and we're pulling things out of it, right? So the thing about The Fire Next Time was like, that show could not exist in any other space. And I made sure of that with some of the choices I made with, you know, painting the gray strip on the wall and the way the lighting was arranged and co-opting the sort of historical marks and painting of the, I think the only thing we did to that gallery is we changed a wall.
Yeah, yeah.
But I wanted to take it as it was given, to put a show into that gallery and not have it be like, you know, like 10 paintings, 50 inches on center. Like, you know, I can't imagine a less interesting thing to do in this current moment.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and to bring it back to MassArt, you know, one of the most moving experiences that I have ever had with an artwork was that faculty show.
Oh yeah, that's
where,
Lisa Tung, who was responsible for that. Yeah.
Yes, an impartial list of unarmed African Americans who were killed by police or who died in police custody during my sabbatical from Massachusetts College of Art and Design, 2014 to 2015. And you returned from sabbatical, and of course, we could talk all day about what was at stake during that sabbatical.
Yeah.
Asterisk, the birth of the Black Lives Matter movement. And what was so remarkable about that work, especially in a faculty context, right, is you're returning to teach, you're returning to the academic world from the very hideous world that there was a literal debate. There was a debate about whether Black lives actually mattered.
Right.
It was a very peculiar moment and a very difficult moment. And one that we are continuing to live through. But standing in front of that work, and for reference, the work was a corner piece, and it was nothing but text that was installed on a wall. It was all of the names of those individuals on this partial list, their names, the how old they were when they were killed, the city in which they died, and the means, their gender, and the means by which they died.
Right.
That was it. You know, it was as conceptual as a Saul LeWitt wall drawing, but with a far darker, more violent subtext.
And, you know, I have to give props to Lisa for letting me do that, because, you know, that was a faculty show. It was a group show. And it was like, you know, coming back from sabbatical or new faculty, and that was, you had to walk through that piece to get into the gallery, right? And so I asked a lot of Lisa and her staff to let me do that, because that became the framework through which you saw the entire show.
Yeah.
Like, people say, like, oh, how come you don't talk about the war? How come you don't talk about this? And how, like, Michel Foucault told us, whatever we talk about, we're talking about the war.
Right.
Whatever we're talking about, our lives are lived at the expense of other people. And like, I don't have the luxury of pretending that it's not that way. Some people do have that luxury, and you know, good on them, you know, because I mean, look, I have, at the end of a long day, all I want to do is pet my dog and watch like reruns of Family Guy. Like, I understand like the desire to like absent oneself from the world. Like, I totally get it, but I don't have that luxury of being able to absent myself from the world, because the world comes knocking at my fucking door.
Right.
Like, I'm walking down the street trying to get a burrito before my class, and the world comes knocking at my door.
Right.
So it's not a question of like not wanting to participate in the world. And this goes back to your thing about living in the world or dealing with it. I don't have the choice not to deal with it. Like, even if I was sitting in a room painting like pretty non-objective abstract paintings, you know, they would still be about the war.
Right.
Like, it would still be about that.
Right.
And so this idea that I could remove myself was alien to me. It's always alien to me. And also, my work was about the human person.
Right. You, in that really brilliant piece that you wrote for Art Forum about Philip Guston and the like whole debacle about the delay of the show, et cetera, when this work was so needed at the time, There's a really, and I pulled it out, I pulled the pull quote into the book, but you said, "I wonder if people know when they are speaking about an artwork, they are actually speaking about themselves."
It's so true. And like, think about it here, right? And like I said, I had a lovely conversation with some graduate students and some students today who absolutely love you. Thank you for arranging that. And I did say to one of them, like, if I could keep my mouth shut, I would have had a different career. Like, yeah. But I've never been that girl. So, Morris Ball's emancipation group, right? That was taken down, right? Because people were offended by it, people were upset by it, and all this sort of stuff. And I said, that's about you.
Yeah.
Morris Ball isn't sitting in a studio somewhere thinking, how can I piss off Black people in 2023 in Massachusetts? That's not what he's thinking.
Right.
And the feeling that if you see an image of a known person, Archer Alexander, who is the Black man in that sculpture, was a known person. He was an enslaved person who freed himself. So every Black person, all the Black people who paid for that statue, do you know why Lincoln's on the penny? That's one of the reasons why Lincoln's on the penny. Because the first money that freed Black people made, they donated to have Morris Ball make that sculpture. It's called the Freedmen's Monument, right? And people in Boston got upset because it was a negative depiction of Black people.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, only people in Boston can look at an image of a Black man
Yes.
breaking his own chains
Yes.
and freeing himself
Yep.
and think it's about subjugation.
Yep. Right, exactly.
Right? That is the problem.
Right.
Like, because that thing, and this whole thing, like, oh, Frederick Douglass said that he didn't like it. So it's like, you know what? Frederick Douglass was one of the most famous men on the planet.
Yes.
Wrote a whole bunch of shit down.
Yeah.
Wrote
Like,
everything down.
the OG
Do
public
you
intellectual.
think if Frederick Douglass didn't like something, that he would be quiet about it? Like, think.
Yeah.
And also, what does Frederick Douglass know about art? He didn't know anything about art. You know what I mean? Like, who cares? You don't like it, good on you. You don't like it, it's fine.
Right.
It's totally fine.
That's okay, that's valid.
But they took the statue down and people said, like, what did they say? We shouldn't have any public art that causes people offense.
Thank you.
I was like, you know
Thank you for
what?
that.
Like, that is like,
Yeah. I'm
like,
so done with that.
that's like looking for the lowest common denominator and then aiming for the curb. Just aiming for the curb. Because look, I'm offended by a whole bunch of stuff. Like, we can't have a world that's organized around whether or not someone is offended.
Yeah.
Right? And the Thomas Ball statue didn't need to be removed, it needed to be interpreted.
Yeah.
And people needed to be educated because Black Americans and their relationship to Lincoln is very different than Black people who are immigrants here
Yes.
and their relationship to Lincoln.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, I don't think that my ancestors deserve to be mocked.
Right.
They don't. Like, and if you don't like it in 2026, guess what? Read a book.
Right. Go make your own work.
Well, Black people called Lincoln the Lamb of God. Black people cried when Lincoln was murdered.
Yeah.
And now the whole thing's, oh, Lincoln wasn't that great of a president and he wasn't that interested in freeing the slaves. From the book, who cares?
Right.
You're looking at Lincoln's behavior with the eyes of 2026.
Right.
And Saul LeWitt tells us, like, the art of the past is usually recognized with the conventions of the present, thereby misunderstanding the art of the past.
Yes.
It's like when people talk about, like, how expressive Titian's paintings are. Titian's not expressing shit.
No.
Titian's at work.
Yeah.
He's like, I gotta paint this Madonna, I gotta paint a baby, I gotta paint some fish. Like, it's not about his feelings.
Right. Yeah.
There's a style, but it's not about personal
I
expression.
got to make sure this composition looks okay from a mirror.
Right,
below.
exactly. And then I got to meet with this Pope who doesn't like this painting, and then I got to design like a tapestry. Like, he's at work.
Yeah.
Right. And the whole idea of art for art's sake, and the artist is like the sort of autotelic subject that is expressing themselves and stuff like that. No one cares what I feel. No one cares about.
Right.
I'm not an expressionist. You don't look at my work and think about me.
Yeah.
You look at my work and you think about yourself, because that's what makes it art.
Yeah.
If you're thinking about, can you imagine how boring? I'm gonna make a painting about my feelings. Really? Like, from the book of who cares?
Right.
Really? There's absolutely not. There's absolutely no way.
Right.
And we are at MassArt. I learned that here.
Yeah.
Like I learned that here. Like if you are looking at it and we're talking about you, then or my work is personal. Well, then why am I looking at it?
Right.
You know what I
It's
mean?
inherently public.
Right. At its core, art is a public discourse.
Yeah.
At its core,
Yeah.
we have this table, right? We can disagree about this table so we don't kill each other, right? So we can fight about this so we don't have to come to blows,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
That's what it is. Oh, the Titian paints the baby and it looks too much like a baby, and that doesn't show the true
Right, it's not holy.
divinity of Christ,
Yeah.
right? And then someone else is like, well, God turned himself into a little baby. That's what Titian is getting at. So dogma and all that sort of stuff comes from the way things are depicted.
Yeah.
But to me, it's utterly, utterly crazy that people would think that the work as an artist is solely to express their own subjectivity, like as if everyone's like some sort of unique,
Right.
never seen before person. Like, really?
Yeah, you're the first. You're the first.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I'm the first.
It is crazy.
Yeah, and I understand that impulse. I do, and I also.
I wish you'd explain it to me.
I mean, I guess what I mean by that is that like, right. So in 2006, the birth of Twitter just changes the global landscape.
Right.
And we go from Peter Jennings, right, having the responsibility of sharing the evening news with us, to, whatever celebrity of the week it is, 140 characters and whatever comes to mind, times the 7.4 billion people that are now on the platform.
Right.
And it fundamentally changes forever American life. And not only American life, but just media culture more
Right.
broadly. Because this is how I'm feeling. This is where I'm at. These are my thoughts about this film or this celebrity or this person or this sweater.
Or like, let's attribute malice to people based on something that they've done on like it's this. I am not on Facebook anymore because
too.
of Auction Block.
Mm,
The shit that people said to me,
mm,
like the messages that I got,
mhm.
and then when I got stopped by the police, the shit that people said to me on social media,
Yeah.
and that shit comes right into your house, comes right into your apartment.
Yeah.
So like I am not like I'm not an unfeeling person. Like there's an actual person in here, right?
But feelings aren't facts.
But the notion that you're not a real thing. I'm in my room in my underwear typing on Twitter.
Yeah.
And somehow I can say these horrible things to you.
Yeah. That I
publicly.
would never say to your face.
You would never say it to my face
Right.
because I would cut a bitch.
Right.
But like there's a way in which there's no way that you could live in the world and behave that way.
Right.
But because of the sort of removal of ethics
Yeah.
in communication,
Yeah.
which is what Peter Jennings was about. Like you
absolutely.
can't go on. Imagine going on the news and lying.
Right. Yeah.
Like that's something that happens every day now.
Yes, that's right.
But the idea that someone would I mean, you could disagree with someone, but we're not going to lie.
Right. Then the whole notion of like partial news,
Right.
Like editorialized news,
Right.
was like just didn't exist.
What was marked off? It was
Yeah.
on the op-ed page. It was somewhere else.
Right,
Or
sure.
you remember on the
was
news
buried.
they would have like on the local news they would have like final thoughts.
Yes.
And it would be some avuncular newscaster,
missed that.
like and the guy who used to do the
They still do that.
the
on
thing
60
about
Minutes.
Christmas, like, oh Lord, Lord and Taylor, oh Lord, look what they've done to Christmas. You guys remember that? Yeah. Well, anyway, it was
Right.
really. I'm 62, so I do like I just remember waiting for that every year. This like sort of like Uncle Fred on the news talking about like back in my day, women couldn't vote and they liked it, like that kind of thing, like that kind of like crazy like man on the street sort of thing.
Absolutely.
But now Twitter is that times a billion.
Times a billion.
Yeah.
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 No, so much has changed. Again, we're here to promote a book, so let's talk about it.
It's a book.
I'm very proud of this book. Also, I just have to say, thank you, MASS MoCA, for letting me publish
MassArt.
this. And thank you, MassArt. Thank you, MASS MoCA, for letting me publish this. Thank you, MassArt, for letting me put it on the screen.
Yeah.
And another show of yours also at Samson that I think about all the time is Rapture.
Yeah.
And
They really got
when
in
I was
trouble for that one.
Okay, so I should also back up and say too, just for context, that thank God for our former chief curator, Denise Marconish,
Yes.
because she sort of put aside a small budget for me to publish a book for my project with Steve, and I didn't want to do an exhibition catalog. I just didn't. I thought it would be too easy to do, but more importantly, I knew that there wasn't a Steve Locke monograph in the world. There wasn't a Steve Locke book, and I didn't want just an exhibition catalog about one project with one essay, and maybe somebody else chimes in and a few installation shots. It just seemed like way too prescribed for me, and I knew that there was so much at stake in this work. And so I went to Denise and I was like, hey, I don't want to do a catalog. I want to do a career monograph. And she was like, okay, cool. And I was like, "Oh, great. Well, I guess we'll get started."
Can we have donuts? Like, just ask for everything.
Right,
You
exactly.
get that, just start asking for more.
And so as we were, thinking about how to organize the book, I knew that I had to cover a lot of ground, right? The monograph covers 25 plus years of work. And there also, Steve is an artist that works in series, that works in bodies of work. And so I was like, okay, well, how do I organize this book in a way that, there are connections across different bodies of work, but they don't chronologically match up? And how do I do this? And so the book is broken up, the monograph is broken up into 5 or 6 sections. Form and meaning, which includes my introductory essay. And the name for that chapter came out of, it's a quote from Steve, and I'm sure many of his students have heard this phrase or this language before, but that the quote is that artists create form and assign meaning.
Right.
Right. That's the ultimate nature of what an artist does. They create form and assign meaning. And that's sort of where the name of that introductory section of the text of the book comes out. It's followed by objecthood, and focuses on Steve's freestanding sculptures. There's an amazing essay by Craig Drennan in that section that speaks to the sort of sculptural nature of Steve's practice. But there are 2 sections of the book that are just tremendous and moving. One of them is there's a section called Witness, and there is another section called Whiteness. And these are, in my opinion, these are the 2 most important chapters of the book. Dr. Kimberly Pinder from Yale wrote the essay for the Witness section, and she wrote it about the facade commission at the Isabella Stewart Gardner, because she was dean, or
She was provost. And
Provost.
she could see it out of her window.
yeah, she was provost here. And it is remarkable. I had no idea when I asked Kim if she would write for the book. I had no idea that Kim came from Baltimore.
Yeah, she grew up
But she
not
grew
far
up-
from where Freddie Gray was murdered.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so the facade work, the facade commission at the Gardner is about Freddie Gray. And I hope that we can talk about that work a bit more. But Kim wrote such a personal and remarkable piece of writing about that commission, about her experience being from Baltimore, bearing witness to this incredible tragedy of Freddie Gray's death, which is one of thousands and thousands and thousands. I'm qualifying it as a tragedy, as if it's like this thing that happened one time, but it is extremely pervasive in law enforcement in America. But yeah, I would just love to talk about it's just around the corner. I would just love to talk about the Gardner work.
It was weird because I don't know if Pirana is here. I think she is here. There she is. the incredible Piranha Calvicini, the contemporary art curator at the Gardner Museum. And you need to meet Josephine Halverson, like the two of
Right
you
across
need to
from you.
meet. Like it's really, I was talking to you, I was talking to Josephine about you. Josephine came to Hunter and met with my students, and she was lovely. And she's also one of the greatest artists alive right now. So I stumble where you stride. I really do. You're just incredible. But Piranha asked me to do the residency at the Gardner, right? And she took me out to lunch. We went to Stephanie's, right? So we went to Stephanie's. And she said, well, what do you think about the Gardner Museum? I was like, oh, well, I went to MassArt. We used to go there all the time. So, it was really great. She used to get stoned and like go to the Gardner and just like wander around and all this sort of stuff. It was really, really amazing. And she said, oh, would you like to be the artist in residence? I was like, I just really put my foot in it. But so yeah, I got to live there, which was spectacular, and living in a place that is created for artists. The Renzo Piano building, which he thinks of as like the nephew to the aunt. The palace is like the noble aunt, and the Renzo's building is like her nephew. So it's a subordinate to, but it is it's all the concatenation of all the tropes of modernism are in the facade of that building.
Yeah.
The rectilinear architecture, the repeating forms, all that sort of stuff, right? And so after around, like I think I was done with the residency, and then Piranha asked me if I wanted to do the facade. And she had seen a partial list of unarmed African Americans who were killed by police. She had seen that work, and she thought I would do something like that for the facade.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is the thing, man. Like, Freddie Gray's murder messed me up. It really messed me up because it was so brutal and so unprovoked.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? You're just standing there, and then you're like your spine is severed.
Yeah.
Right? So that was unfinished business for me. Like I couldn't get past it. Right? And so I really, for the Gardner Commission, I was thinking about that. And then I had the asking myself the very simple question, like, what color is Freddie Gray? Like, what color? If I could make a color called Freddie Gray, what would it be? So I took these photographs of him, and it was very because I'm very much against spectacle. I wasn't going to put images of a murdered black man on the side of a building. Like I wasn't going to do that.
Yeah.
The appetite for dead black people in this culture is insatiable.
Yeah. Plays
we
on a loop.
love seeing that. We
Yeah.
love seeing it. So I wasn't going to do that. And also, not for nothing, again, like if I kept my mouth shut, I'd have a different career. If you're a black artist, you can be very handsomely rewarded for doing that.
Right. Yeah.
And I just didn't want to.
Yeah.
And I want everybody to get paid. Don't get me wrong. I want everybody to make money and be happy. I wasn't going to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So I had to find a way to talk about the loss of that man without sensationalizing him and without continuing to brutalize him. And people asked me, oh, did you know his family and blah, 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 blah. I was like, no, I had nothing. I saw that on television.
Yeah.
Like it happened to all of us.
Yeah.
Right. How can you watch someone be murdered on television and not have that affect you? What's wrong with you? Right. So I went back to, the drawing board, literally, and I tried to draw him, and I tried to do all these different sorts of things, and none of that worked. And then I just kept thinking about the color. And very famous Bryce Martin work, 3 Deliberate Grays for Jasper Johns, right? And I thought maybe if Bryce could make grays for Jasper, maybe I can make grays for Freddie. And it was as simple as that. And then I had to figure out the conceptual way to do it, And so there's tons of images of him, and I found 3 images where he's still alive. And I used Photoshop to average the pixels, and then I printed out the color, and then I mixed it on my palette. And then I made swatches for myself, and then I took the swatches to Benjamin Moore, because that's the best paint. Don't be fooled by this Pharaoh and ball stuff. Don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. Benjamin Moore is fine.
Yeah, if it ain't
It's
broke,
just
don't
fine.
fix it.
It's just fine, right? And they have the computer,
Yeah.
so they scan the color, and so I made these 3 grays, right? And then the piece was originally horizontal,
Right.
but when we were looking at the facade, the verticality of the building, and it's made in panels, so it reiterates the architecture of the building. So it's almost like the building itself is pushing this memorial out into space, right? Because it's really important to me that it deal with the tropes of modernism, that it deal with the tropes of minimalism, that because it's only in the West that we think that form isn't connected to meaning.
Right.
Like, and people said like, oh, it looks like ice cream, it looks like all this sort of stuff. And I think it's kind of beautiful to think of someone's life in terms of ice cream. That's really kind of beautiful. I'm fine with that, you know? Yeah. But it was one thing when you saw it, and it's facing Roxbury, right? And like, the great thing about the Gardner is that it is a museum that is very much aware of where it is.
Yes.
And the people that come into it. And so it's reaching out to that community about something that was, people didn't really want to talk about.
Yeah.
And like the wonderful woman, Ann Fitzpatrick, who paid for the facade, she went through it with her friends. Her friends said, why are you paying money to honor a felon? And like said horrible stuff to her, right? And Ann is the kind of woman, Ann's like, she just cut those people dead.
Right.
She was like, I'm all done with you.
Yeah.
All done, right? Because it's, so you can't tell me that institutions don't care about that kind of thing, that funders don't care about that. They do.
They do.
They do. You just have to find the right ones.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And I'm not, like I said, I'm not the go along to get along girl. That's not me. I've never been that way.
Yeah.
So I knew that I could suggest it to Piranha, and it was up to them. Like I'm gonna make what I'm gonna make. If you let me, I'll do it. But if you don't let me, that's fine too. The idea is still sound, right? And there are different versions of that piece. That Anne has I painted a version of it for Anne that is in her collection. And then there's an image in the book of the piece that's a companion piece that's installed in the Gardner, in Mrs. Gardner's apartments where the offices are. Yeah.
And didn't the like actual like the fabric or the banner itself have to be a different color?
Oh yeah. That's true.
Than
That's
the
a really
actual
good point.
like grays themselves, so that they could appear.
Well, Renzo Piano, who did the Gardner facade, specified everything that goes into the apartment in that building. Like I think Piranha had to fight to get like a fan for the stove, so like there an exhaust fan, because Renzo was like, no cooking. The fabric is a heat transfer fabric, and it's translucent. So when we got the first prints of it, it's a heat transfer process, and we saw it, we're like, this is awful. And then I realized, oh, I have to adjust the color to compensate for the green in the facade.
Yes.
So, and then it was, it's light fast, so it didn't really fade very, very much. I have it in my apartment. Like, it's not out in my apartment, but I have it, right? But we had to adjust the color of the printing to compensate for the green that was coming through. So it was really, Ben Peterson's color theory class really came in handy, because I can say that, yeah.
It's a remarkable work, and there was, when we were working on the MASS MoCA show, there was a part of me that was like, oh, do we bring this work to MASS MoCA? Do we like find some alternative way of, and I never even made the ask, because I knew that work was so site specific. Yeah. And it was also it was specific to that moment.
Yeah. I mean, well. I don't think I mean, I've made versions of it, don't get me wrong. Sure. But like it's paint. Like you can buy the paint and paint it wherever you like, you know what I mean? You can buy Freddie Gray, you can buy that color, right? But how it's deployed, if it were at MASS MoCA, it would be operating in the same conversation of spectacle.
Right.
That some of the other things were doing. And I didn't want to do that. Like at the Gardner, you didn't know what the hell that was until you went into the museum. You thought, oh my God, this is a monument to a man who was murdered by the police. This is a sort of critique of state violence. Yeah. And then we found the wonderful choir in children's choir in Roxbury, who came and performed a requiem in front of it. You know what I mean? So it became like a site for gathering and stuff like that. And people who knew what it was. And people who didn't were like, oh, look, that's pretty. Right. Which is fine. Like, I want you to know that, like, we pass by memorial architecture all the time. You walk through the common, there's memorial architecture all the time, and no one pays any attention to it. Right. And people ignore violence against women all the time.
Yeah.
They ignore violence against Black people all the time.
Yeah.
So it's fitting that there's a memorial to something like that that's in public view that people just don't even see, right? So like, there are 4 monuments to women in this Commonwealth. 4.
Yeah.
One of them is like a free-for-all with 3 women in it, right? You know what I mean? Like poor Lucy Stone and Phyllis Wheatley and Abigail Adams don't even get their own memorial.
Right.
Right? The other one is Anne Hutchinson.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't even get to that one because it's on the State House grounds.
Right.
And then there's the Harriet Tubman in the South End.
Right.
Like, there's a lot more women. Like, there's a lot.
A lot.
Right? They're over 50% of the population, but they're not honored in public space.
Right.
And that, to me, that's a choice.
Yeah.
Like, you could do any number, people build any number of things. There's all sorts of, well, there's all sorts of public art that happens in the city around different things.
Yes.
Right? And Boston was my home for a long, long, long time. My career started here. And my understanding of the public space of this city is framed by my commitment to public education, right? So knowing what I know about how the public works here and how aggressively stupid the political establishment here is,
Yes.
and how terrified they are of offending people,
Yeah.
and how short-sighted they can be, and how they hung me out to dry.
Yes.
You know, like I don't have any illusions about how hard it is to build something here that is not spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to like make like something that looks like fireworks over the Rose Kennedy Greenway, they're in favor of that. But if you really want to talk about like what happened here,
Right.
or
The
like
transatlantic slave trade.
yeah, and like this is the weird thing to me. Everybody knows. Like, it's not like we're doing something that no one knows about.
Right.
Everybody knows.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that like hundreds of thousands of women worked in those mills in Salem.
Mm-hmm.
Where's their monument?
Mm-hmm.
Where's that? You know, where's the monument to all the teachers that have come out of this school?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where's the monument to like the Quakers
Mm-hmm.
who gave their lives so that Black people could be free?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where's that?
Yeah.
Like, but you know, they'll make this sort of weird Harriet Tubman sculpture in a place that has no relationship to the Underground Railroad, instead of talking about what really happened here.
Right.
Let's talk about the real thing. We all know it.
Yeah.
People have written books about it. There've been movies, all this stuff. We all know about it,
Mhm.
right? But we can't talk about it.
And this is what's so remarkable to me and to so many of us in the room about what you do as an artist, because your work engenders a dialogue, a conversation, and an interest that may not have existed before someone stood in front of the work. And I
Right.
guess then another way of saying that is, and this is the case with the facade work for the Gardener, it's the same as the case for the #Killers
Mhm.
series, is there is a larger history, there is a greater context that is at stake. There's something else that's happening here.
Right.
And if you look closely enough, and if you sit with the work long enough, and if you sit with the feelings of discomfort that now you are wrestling with, standing in front of the work, there's something there to discover. You know, again, to bring this back to the book, to bring this back to the MASS MoCA exhibition, the star of the show, of The Fire Next Time, was this #Killers body of work, which this was the largest presentation
Yeah.
of these works. There were 30 individual works. Steve originally wanted to exhibit 50 of them, and I said, I love that. However,
I love that for you.
yes.
Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen.
By the way, for the Gen Z folks in the room, please don't please just as you know, use your best judgment. But to say to someone, "I love that for you,"
It's not.
if you're
not
if
good.
you're like a millennial or above,
Yeah.
it is like being punched in the face.
It really is. It's terrible.
Like,
it's a terrible thing.
You
to
are
say.
inspiring someone to want to like throw down.
Yeah.
If you're like, I love that for
I
you.
love that for you.
Please stop saying that.
I will
It
smack
will.
you.
Yeah, we will create the violence that
Oh my
Steve will make
God.
work about.
It's true. Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
But there were 30 works in the show, and they are very subtle and deeply unsettling portraits of individuals who are responsible for the deaths of Black folks. Some of those folks, their deaths made global and national headlines. Some of those folks are lesser known victims of racial violence. Some of those people, some of the killers that are featured in the work have gotten off scot-free. Many of them were scot-free for decades.
Yeah.
You know, but the work is so unsettling. I invited Helen Molesworth to do an interview with Steve for the book, and I was so when I got the transcript of the interview, I was so moved because Helen essentially like made herself vulnerable enough to say in that interview, you know, Steve, I really feel uncomfortable with this work as a white woman.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable for me to sit and to stand in front of this work because the #Killers series is essentially about how white supremacy functions and operates, and how racial violence is a huge part of that equation.
Right.
And for Helen, this was really difficult work to sort of wrestle with. Murray White from the Boston Globe, when he reviewed the show, he said that he sat in the gallery at MASS MoCA for 2 hours because he felt that if he left the show, that he would be turning his back on the subject matter itself, that he would be implicated if he were to turn and walk away from the exhibition. That's how powerful that work is. Karen Krasinski, shout out to Karen Krasinski for the brilliant essay that she contributed to this book. And her essay was so important for the two of us because, Steve and I can talk all day till the cows come home about the project of whiteness.
Yeah.
But it took Helen as a white woman and Karen Krasinski as a white woman to actually point the finger at the problem of whiteness in the publication itself.
Right. Like I have a think tank of Black women who I talk to all the time, and they're here tonight. I think Del Hamilton's here, Nikki Green, and Alexandra Smith. Like they're like my think tank. Whenever, like when Auction Block blew up, I was on the phone with them. So I mean, the support from them has really been crucial. And when we were going into the book, I said, like, I don't think I want to ask a Black woman to talk about this work.
Yeah.
Like, I know, like, Nikki could have written beautifully about it, or Del could have, or like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Because they're all geniuses.
Yes.
They're all wonderful, incredible artists and incredible thinkers. But I said, this work needs to, the person who needs to struggle with this work is a white woman.
Yes.
They need to struggle with it. And Karen stepped up, and that text is beautiful, and it's sobering to read.
It is, yes.
Yeah, because one of the big problems when people unpack their whiteness is when they unpack their whiteness to Black people, they sort of try to make Black people, reassure Black people that they're not a bad white person. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is like, just so you know, Black people know all the bad white people. Like, we know. Like, you don't have to, like, we as soon as we talk to you, we know, right? So you don't have to do that. We already have it sussed out. And second of all, like, Karen wrote a sort of academic version of that essay.
Yes.
And it got rejected over and over and over again because she was a white woman. And they wanted a Black person to write about that work. And I was like, haven't we done enough?
Right, aren't there
for
enough
you?
DEI committees full of people of color?
Joe Bear, who was a really, really great artist who passed away a few years ago, I met her at Skowhegan, and we were sitting at, and she was 90 years old at the time. And we were sitting at the table, and she was an amazing artist. She had a shit time of it being a woman. She had a husband who beat the shit out of her, like was jealous of her success. It was terrible, right? But she was incredible. She was like a force. And I was talking to her, and she said, Steve, sometimes you're sitting at the table and someone makes a big pile of shit, a big plate of shit, and they slide it across the table to you, and they tell you that you have to eat it. And she said, what you do is you sit forward and you go, that's not mine. That's not mine, right? And she had done that in her life because she was a tremendously successful artist with one kind of work. And then she changed her work.
Yes.
And people were like, oh, you're not making the kind of work that we like anymore. She was like, yeah, well, I don't know what to tell you about that. I'm on some other shit now. So like, and that was the remarkable thing. She's an incredible artist, incredible artist. But I never forgot that lesson. Like sometimes people want to serve that to you.
Absolutely.
And like that has nothing to do with me. That's yours.
I gave a curator tour at MASS MoCA for the show, and it was a members tour, and a very well-meaning elderly white woman was in the show, and on the tour with me, and I'm going into great detail talking about all the work and what's at stake, and that the hashtag killers works were about legitimate killers. These were like real lives that were at stake. And her hand flew up, and because she's looking for the labels, and I use this sort of interpretation strategy, sort of, where I basically, for a wall of like 12 or 15 works, you had to walk all the way down to the end of the wall to look at the label. So you had to know who you were looking at. You had to remember, like, okay, it's the 6th work of 15, right? Okay. And then you like walk over, and then you're looking for a victim's name because you know that these are killers. And instead, it's the title of these works are the names of the killers themselves with some sort of contextual information, a courtroom shot, a mug shot, Wall Street Journal, whatever. And her hand goes flying up, and she says, why aren't the names of the victims displayed next to each individual portrait so that I know who the victim is? And in that moment, Steve was not there, but in that moment, I felt Steve's spirit come over me. And I was like, Evan, keep it together. It's a curator's tour. It's a members tour. And I said, if Steve were here, he would tell you, I can't make this any easier for you. I can't make this any easier for you. And I said, I said those words. I said, if the artist was here, he would say this. And she was really not pleased with that response.
Right.
And so I spelled it out, and I said, okay, look, so here's the deal. If you are really interested, if there's something in your soul, in your being, that wants to know more about this work, you've got this thing in your pocket, and it is the fountain of all human knowledge and imperfection, by the way, deeply imperfect. You can go and search and ask, who is Carol?
Carolyn Bryant.
Carolyn Bryant, thank you. Who is Carolyn Bryant? And you throw that into Google, and all of a sudden, Emmett Till's face pops up in the Google image search, right? If you are so invested, or if you're even just curious, do the homework. Take the step to learn more about what you are standing in front of and the implications of that work. Right, but I don't understand why these things, I can't make that any easier for you. And then, sometime later, we gave a talk at MASS MoCA, and, a woman, was like, thank you, Steve. I'm so excited. I love your work, blah, blah, blah. Racism is such a really big problem. We're still really struggling with it. What advice do you have right? For how we deal with that. You know, and I like, again, that was one of those, Steve was literally sitting right next to me and I still felt his spirit come over my body.
It's really something.
You know, and you had a really remarkable comment for that woman, you know, which was like, girl, and the girl was not included in the statement,
Yeah,
but
right.
the sentiment was there.
It was understood.
It was understood. It's like, girl, we have been talking about this
Right.
for a long time.
Right.
There was a whole civil rights movement. There's a Black Lives Matter movement. People of color, women of color,
Right.
have been saying for decades, you need to look in the mirror. You know, in the words of Toni Morrison, take me out of it.
Yeah, it's not my problem.
This is not my problem.
Right.
You know, and I think if we could do a little bit more work around critical thinking and think about the examples that have already been laid at our feet for decades, the answers to these problems already exist.
Well, here's the thing. Like when I was working on Auction Block, and I had wonderful collaborators, Julian Phillips, who's here tonight, and Patty Seitz, who's a professor here at MassArt. People would say like, well, is that the real shape of the auction block? Is that what it really looked like? And I thought, these people will look at a picture of Jesus and think that that's what he really, no one was there.
Right.
Like no one was just like, this is exactly what the Immaculate Conception looked like.
Right.
Right? Like none of you were there.
Yeah,
So like
Mary had bangs.
Right. Yeah, right. Which is that's the first sin. That's the original sin, is Mary with bangs right there. But this whole idea that somehow like an artist invents a form and then gets you to believe in it.
Yeah.
And so when we were coming up with the form of the auction block, it had to communicate that, you know? And Patty, Julian, and I were like going back and forth about what shape should it be, how big should it be, what's the relationship, and all that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. Because once you get the right form, it becomes unavoidable. Yeah. And with Killers, I made those drawings big, I made them small, I made them more photographic, I made them less photographic. There's tons of failures in that work. Yeah. But then when I hit on the form, I was like, that's it. This is what we're gonna do. And then the work starts to generate itself. Now, it takes a tremendous toll to make this work.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Like, how does, and I swear we're going to go into Q&A like immediately after this.
No, we're not. We're just going to talk on it. Sorry.
But like,
Sorry.
To put it in the form of a question, how does a Black man in his 60s, like you look like you are not a day over 45, how does a Black man in his 60s stare at the face of a killer and try to get the contour of the nose right? Right, like the shape of Dylan Roof's crazy pencil head of hair. Like how, and what is astonishing to me is how in the depiction of a human being, a simple chin, a nose, some hair, a profile possibly, you are actually depicting monsters.
Yeah.
And the viewers who have a real legitimate understanding of this work are staring into the face of a monster. How do you, and this is the last question that I'll offer you, how do you do that day in and day out and it not take an individual toll on you as both as an individual, as a queer Black individual, and as an artist? Like, how does that happen?
Well, there's two parts to this. First is that like when I started Killers, I think the first drawing was Darren Wilson.
Yeah.
And it started, I was in this conversation, I was on the radio, I think, around the Dana Schutz controversy. Remember that nonsense? Yeah. There's like, she doesn't have the right to paint, like, shut up.
Right, as if just artists haven't been painting other people's stories their whole lives.
Shut up, you know? It's just so dumb. As if somehow like a painting of Emmett Till is gonna hurt him. Like, he's dead. Dana Schutz didn't kill Emmett Till, the Klan did, right? So that got me thinking about, because someone called in, I can't remember who called into the radio, and she was like, well, could you make a drawing of Anne Frank in a concentration camp? I was like, yeah, give me an hour and a half. Do I bang that out? Yeah, I can do it.
Sure.
Right? So that got me thinking about what can be imaged. Like not whether it should or shouldn't, like take the judgment out of it, take the
yeah.
moral part out of it.
Right.
Can you do it?
Yeah.
Right. And I started with Darren Wilson, and I thought, this is the other secret, right? Anybody can learn how to draw. Okay, it's a skill. If you want to learn how to draw, you can come here, and there's all sorts of people who can teach you how to draw, right? So I have that skill set, and so if I focus that skill set, I can draw anything, right? But like I said, I'm not an expressionist, so these drawings are not about my feelings about these people. The drawings are reportage. They're almost forensic in a way, right? What's hard is that I tried to get to 100 of them, right? First of all, the fact that I could get to 100, that there are actually more than 100 cases of this happening.
Right.
But, you know, life intervened, and like, you know, the election and the betrayal of Kamala Harris and the sort of, like all that sort of stuff became like a weight that I couldn't reconcile myself to do it. And then I started failing at making, like I still can't draw the cops that murdered Freddie Gray. Like I can't do it. Like I have tried any number of times and I just can't do it.
Yeah.
And it's not that I don't like the drawings look like them and all that sort of stuff. Like Donna Keegan was my drawing teacher. She taught me how to draw. Like I know how to draw, right? But I kept trying to, the drawings just failed in this really fundamental way because they felt, you know, it's easy to make a cartoon drawing of the evil. Like that's easy. Like draw Dylan Roof and draw his Cupid's bow mouth and draw that bowl haircut and draw like the lost expression in his face. Like that's the goal here, is to look through the sort of, and the images are quotidian. They're not like portraiture images. They're mugshots. They're all this sorts of stuff, right? So the challenge of it became not the act of the drawing. It became the world that I live in. And look, my sister works in public health. My sister is saving people's lives every day, right? I know I'm not saving anybody's life by doing this. Like I know the people who are saving people's lives, right? I just know that if I can start this, if I can do something to focus your attention in a way that makes you question what you believe, that's the core power of what art can do. I can make you reassess, right? And like people say like, you know, like, oh, like you drew the guy who murdered Viola Liuzzo. Viola Liuzzo's not white. Viola Liuzzo's not black. I'm like, yes, she is.
Yeah, right.
She stepped across the color line and it cost her life.
Right.
So she black to me.
Right.
Heather Heyer was murdered by white supremacists. White supremacists will kill their own children. That's what white supremacy does, right? So like she's black to me.
Yeah.
Like and James Reeb was murdered in Selma. He's black to me.
Yeah.
You know, and the weird thing about hegemonic whiteness, right, is that it refuses to see itself as other than the oppressor, right? I say to white people all the time, how come Viola Liuzzo isn't your hero? How come James Reeb isn't your hero? How come the white people who started the NAACP, how come those people aren't your hero? Why are you so attached to the Klan? Like you think whiteness is about that.
Right, sure.
Right, that's your default.
Right, yeah, if we could wipe that out, then the
Instead
problem
of thinking
solved.
like, wow, there were all these Quakers who like gave their lives for like human freedom. You guys know that Quakers were murdered. The Quakers who in Pennsylvania who protected people on the Underground Railroad, when they were found out, they were murdered, right? So like that's part of the legacy here. And like I'm not telling tales out of school. This is all stuff that's known.
Yeah.
Right. So when it gets to the art of it, Evan, I am a very, very well-trained artist. I got like the world-class training here. I bring every bit of that to bear when I'm trying to draw these people, but I don't know if I can finish that project. I don't know if I can pick up the killers again.
Yeah.
I think I got to 76. The last ones I drew.
Oh, the guy on the subway,
I
right?
drew Daniel Penny, who murdered Jordan on the subway, and the lesbians who murdered their whole family.
Yeah.
Devontae Hart. So I drew those two women. You know, the 6 black children.
Yeah.
Like just drove the car off a cliff.
Off the cliff, yeah.
And one of them, Devontae Hart, they never found his body. So in my mind, I really believe that like maybe like
Yeah.
Apollo snatched him up and he's the cupbearer of the gods or something. Like I really want to believe that that
Yeah.
little boy escaped,
Yeah.
right? But I know that that's, that's
Yeah.
magical thinking. So,
Well, there's one place where I will disagree with you there, and that is that I guarantee you the work that you are doing is saving people's lives.
oh, that's very sweet of you.
I really truly believe that. The work that you produce is so important and it is so necessary. And part of the difficulty of sitting with your work is that it requires something of the viewer.
Oh, yeah.
This
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
conversation, and we started with the world, and here we are. One of the themes that we've touched on a number of times is like how easy we want things to be, how accessible we want things to be, and we use that term accessible to mean dumb or to mean easy to understand.
Right.
We mean easy.
Right.
And your work is difficult to accept. It is difficult to grapple with, and it is deeply, deeply, deeply necessary. I have had the great fortune of being your friend for 18 years, and I was waiting for the opportunity to curate a project with you of legitimate meaning. And it has really been the honor of my professional life to work with you and to befriend you on this journey. And so if you would please join me in a round of applause for Steve Locke. I think we have time for a couple of questions. Now's not the time to be shy.
Right.
You got
If you
Steve
could be
Locke in the
any
room.
animal, what would you be and why?
Great. There's one here.
Use the microphone so our people at home can hear. People at home.
Steve and Evan, thank you. That was really rich and fascinating. Thank you. Steve, I have a question for you. And in a way, you already answered it, but I still would love to hear you say just a little more. You said at its core, art is a public discourse.
Yep.
And you're known obviously for certain public art pieces, quote unquote public art pieces, and other pieces that we wouldn't think of that way. And I'm just wondering if you try to draw a distinction or define public art. Is it as simple as inside outside, as simple as art space, non-art space? Like where it's a spectrum or a scale or whatever, but what else would you say about public art as opposed to non-public art?
Well, I sort of make how do I say this? Joseph? John. My public work deals with memory and memorialization, which is different than just regular, like, here's a sculpture outdoors, right? I'm not opposed to public art, but I don't think of myself as working in that realm. I'm working more in the realm of public memory. And the projects that I've done and the proposed projects I've done with Julian Phillips have dealt with the intersection of violence and public memory, right? Even Normal, which is about the education, like the right of people to have an education, because that's what this school is. This is the first school to grant a teaching degree for art, right? This school exists because of the Massachusetts Drawing Act. So the act of art education is a political activity. And like all the teachers that we're training here to go out into the public schools, they're trained with a particular way of thinking about art, right? So I wanted to honor that. So that's about public memory. It's not just about like putting things in public, right? I think my work has problems when it goes into the public because of the things that Evan said, right? All right, I'm just gonna say this. There's a church here in Boston that unveiled a recent public memorial. And I had an opportunity to propose something for that commission, which I knew they weren't gonna hire me. It's sort of like, what did you think I was gonna do?
Right.
Like, I mean, you're asking, like, you know what I'm
You
gonna
asked
do, right?
me.
Right. So there, like, this congregation owned people. They had enslaved people. And they wanted to do something as a congregation to honor the fact that they had done this. And my proposal was to crack the sacristy in half and open up a fissure right down the aisle and inlay it with black and bronze tile with the names of all the people. So you had to, if you were gonna worship, you had to worship, this is what this church is built on, right? That was my proposal, right? What they did was something different, and that's, you know what, that's fine, right? Whatever, good on them, right? But the thing that was built privileges a kind of comfort that I'm not remotely interested in when it comes to the lives of Black people. I'm not remotely interested in making you feel comfortable about the murder of Black people. I'm not. The use of their labor. So that's the difference. Like, no one is gonna ask me to decorate the side of a building. No one's gonna ask me to make a public sculpture. Even the sculpture that was proposed at MASS MoCA, I proposed, and I work with Julian on this one, we proposed building, you know the Lincoln catafalque? You know what that is? When Lincoln was assassinated, they laid his body on this pine bier with a bunting. And now whenever an important person dies and they lay them in state, they lay them on the Lincoln catafalque, right? My plan was to recreate the Lincoln catafalque and put on top of it the amount of space allocated to an enslaved person on the Middle Passage. Because that's what we need to memorialize, right? Because someone did the math to figure that out. Do you understand that? Like, someone thought, like, well, we have this much space, and if we give them 50 centimeters to lie down in, and 17 centimeters, so like, this is the amount of, someone did that math. And that's written down, I didn't make that up. So like, that is, when you talk about public art, that's the kind of thing that I would put in public. But that's not public art, that's about public memory. And there's something very, very different about that. And I think people struggle with public memory because they want to feel good about, they just don't want to think about like, all those enslaved people are free now. They're not free, they're dead. They were born enslaved, they died enslaved. So what is this idea that they now in heaven, they have freedom? What if heaven's not real? Like, I'm fucking real. I'm sitting right here. We don't know about heaven because none of those enslaved people have come back and said, like, all is forgiven. That hasn't happened, right? So my public work engages with public silence, right? And it's different than public art. And I think that public art has a different function, it does a different thing. And there's something like that, that Daniel Chester French that's on the, that's in the public garden, Cast Thy Bread Upon the Waters. It's one of the most beautiful pieces of public art in this Commonwealth. It's magnificent, right? But the Ether Monument is also there, which is this sort of weird concatenation of like Arabic tropes. Like, it's bizarre, right? And that is in the same space. So when we talk about publicness and public art, we have to talk about that separate from memorialization. And we have to think about the difference between information and spectacle. Because a lot of public art is about spectacle. Oh, look, it moves, it lights up. Oh, isn't this great? Wow, it's fun. Take my picture in front of it. There was that giant video screen at MoMA. Did you guys see this? This giant, like, lava lamp video screen. I was like, I'd rather be executed for a crime I didn't commit than like to see that. That was ridiculous. It was just ridiculous, you know? Yeah. Anybody else? We'll sing them all tonight. Come on.
Hi.
Hi, who's talking?
Me.
Oh, hey.
Hi.
That's Julian Phillips right there.
That is right here. Not me,
Phillips,
right
yeah.
here.
Yeah.
I'm overwhelmed with the amount of things I want to ask you. First of all, I just thank you for your commitment to the work and the things that you do. I'm really interested in you're exploring so much violence and taking it all in. And you just mentioned not even being able to finish the images of the folks who murdered Freddie Gray. How do you protect your own emotional and spiritual peace throughout this? And I can imagine you've gone through so many things around your responsibility to tell these stories.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you come down from this having engaged with so much violence, and especially on a spiritual level, almost like you're face to face with these people, and I don't want to say bringing them back to life, but in the way that you are bringing them back to this plane,
Mm-hmm.
how do you protect yourself through that?
I come from enslaved people on both sides of my family. Like, none of my grandparents could vote, right? So as hard as my work is, it is nothing compared to the lives of my ancestors. It is a day at the beach, you know? I have had, most of the people who know me know that I had a really horrible childhood. So horrible, the fact that I don't even like to talk about it. But what is your name?
Joseph.
Joseph, I ended up in a room with a pencil and a piece of paper. That's what happened to me. All that other sort of stuff, all the trauma, all the violence, all that sort of stuff, Steve Locke in a room with a pencil and a piece of paper, and that's all I needed. That's all I needed, because I could make my own world. I could make it the way I wanted it to be. And if there's like a sort of mythological autotelic moment in my life, it was the fact that I can make art. I can do something that is completely mine. And like I said to Evan, I've said to people countless times, no one is more surprised than me that anybody is remotely interested in the work that I do. No one is more surprised than me. That's not why I did it. That's not why I became an artist. It was none of that. I came to MassArt because I wanted to be an artist. That's all I wanted, right? And if somebody saw the work, that's great. And if nobody saw the work, I'd still be making it, right? But I don't, I'm not a very spiritual person. I lost my faith when my mother died. So I was done with God and all that sort of stuff. I do pray to my parents. That's probably about the most spiritual thing I do. There's a beautiful picture of my parents at the end of the book.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah. But I don't, there's no comfort in contemporary life. There is none, aside from the joy that we share with each other, right? That's why, like, during the civil rights era, or like during the AIDS epidemic, right? We would be like doing die-ins and protesting during the day, and then Saturday night we'd be in like clubs and bathhouses partying, because that communal activity that's what kept us going. So this idea that you're going to keep yourself going by yourself is specious. No, you have to get with your people, and you have to love on each other, and like tell each other stories, and honor the people, honor the fallen. You have to do all that sort of stuff, but you have to do it in community. And I have a wonderful community of people. I got my Black Girl Squad that we have this, our text chain is off the hook. It is off the hook, right? I have my sister back in Detroit, and we're doing another book event in New York City, and my sister's gonna come. So I'm really thrilled about that. I'm so thrilled. But you know, the idea that you can soothe yourself or heal yourself, Joseph, is just not true. It's not true. You have to be in community. Right? Yeah.
I think we might have time for one more.
If you could be any animal, what would you be and why? I would be a ferret.
Hi, honey. So in 6 months after the death of George Floyd, white people had moved on to a different flavor.
It's true. It is true.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I think it was, it might have been Tamagotchi, it might have been Pokemon.
Right.
And then starting at about March of 2025, there was a growing realization that, this might happen to us too.
Yeah.
And this is an impossible question because I love asking you those. What would it,
is it vaguely possible for white people to stop asking black people and black artists to tell that story?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a valid question, because I think, and like I said in the beginning, you can be richly rewarded if you do the step and fetch it thing for black people, right? And you can be, if you're a woman and you're like, you can traffic on your looks as a way to get attention, and like you can do that, right? I think that what is starting to happen, the thing that is, the thing that gives me, I'm not, my mother used to say, hope is a thief. You better get to work, right? So I'm not like a hopeful person, right? I'm much more interested in working. But the thing that really shocked me was after George Floyd was murdered, you saw white people in the streets getting in the faces of cops. That was the difference. That was the thing. Like white people getting in between black people and the police, like, and like, you know, Jewish people surrounding Muslims so they could pray, like all that sort of stuff, like that kind of solidarity that started to happen, that is new in my lifetime. Like I grew up in segregation. I'm in no way surprised at what violence can come and how black leaders are targeted and stuff like that. And the ways that the women who started the Black Lives Matter movement were just vilified. And the way Jasmine Crockett has been vilified, and the way Kamala Harris has been vilified, simply because they're black women, right? But what is interesting is that white people and white women are actually starting to interrogate themselves. Like I was shocked that Karen agreed to write that essay.
Yeah, yeah.
And when I read it, I was like, oh, good on her. She really went for it. She really went for it.
She really did.
Yeah. And so when people start doing that, you know, James Baldwin said, like, you have a choice. You can be white or you can be human. Like, those are your choices, you know? And if you decide to be human, that means you're over here with us. And if you're over here with us, the cops will kill you. That is what will happen. Goodman and Schwerner figured it out. Right? They stepped across the line and they had to pay with their lives, right? And whiteness is so pernicious that white people blamed Goodman and Schwerner for their own murders, right? But I think the thing that is happening now is like you're seeing anti-immigrant violence kill white people with impunity on television, right? And I don't mean to be flip when I say this. I'm not surprised that that is happening, but white people are very surprised. A lot of white people are very, very surprised that, like, and black people told you that this is what was going to happen. We told you, like, they're not coming for us. They've always had their foot on our neck, right? But now, like, now it's everybody, right? And so I think that threat terrifies white people. And I know that Dave Chappelle is really controversial, but he said, like, white people aren't going to survive themselves. Because I know what they're capable of, right? And like the woman, the poor woman who was murdered in Minnesota, she didn't see that coming. And I'm watching that video and I'm thinking, ooh, girl, because these men, something wrong with them. Something wrong. Like, and so that putting yourself in that position as a white person has now become fraught. And I think that's what has to happen. It isn't, I don't want anybody to get hurt. I really, really don't. But with my like 10,000 mile view, that's the only way things are going to change. Nothing changes in this country unless white people decide it's going to change. There's not enough black people to like sway the decisions of this country, right? So like it's a thing, Con, and I think that I used to have a lot of faith in young people, but I don't anymore, you know. But I did say to Maureen Kelly, like we did the best we could with our students. We gave our students everything. Like we're at an urban school. We taught our students about justice, about violence, about like if the kids go through the metal detector, I go through the metal detector, right? Like, and believing in urban schools and watching urban schools do what they do, we gave our students everything they needed, right? It's up to them now. It's my job. You write my phone number on your arm so I can bail you out because I have money, right? I'm too old to get my ass beat by the police. Like I received all my ass beatings, right? But now it's up to our students. And I think our students, the MassArt students, are really well equipped, particularly the ones who are in education. They're like, they come into that program with their dukes up, they're ready to go, right? So I do have a modicum of faith in our students. But for the most part, yeah, too many people are, I saw this thing the other day about someone was asking ChatGPT about their relationship.
Girl.
I mean, like that's, you know, like all these rich people, like Sam Altman and all those people, you know, their kids don't use that technology, right? Like Stephen Jobs, someone said to Steve Jobs, oh, your kids must love the iPad. And Steve Jobs said, my kids don't have iPads. So there's something about that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who is that for?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I'm telling you, I tell people to read books all the time, and I know how hard it is with the loss of attention span and stuff like that. But honestly, man.
On that note, we have some books to sign.
Oh yeah, we do. I could do this all night. Thank you so much.
Thank
really,
you.
thank you.
Thank you, MassArt.
It's a mitzvah to have you here. It really is.
Thank you.
To that point, if you are interested in purchasing one of Steve's monographs or you have pre-purchased it, exit the Tower Auditorium, take a right, and they'll be signing books, and you can purchase books in the next room. Thank you for being here tonight.